Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Can't we all just get along? That's my whole point. You know, it's the hypocrisy of the thing. These are the people who say they don't like censorship, but they're always the first ones to censor you when they don't like what you have to say.
That's right.
Or in this case, they don't like what my candidate had to say about Israel, right? These are the people who support Palestine. And here's the irony, Rick. I support Palestine too. We agree on that issue. I disagree with Kennedy on that issue. And they come to me every single time he says something they don't like, talk to your guy. You set him straight. Tell him to change his position. I'm like, nobody can tell Kennedy what to think, what to say. His own campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, strongly supports Palestine. He can't control Kennedy. Kennedy's, he's got that in common with Trump. He's his own man. He's got his own mind, his own point of view, and his campaign staffers and the people around him, they can't control him. You don't put Robert F. Kennedy on a leash. He's going to tell you what he really thinks. He told you what he really thinks about Israel and Palestine. And if you don't like it, well, lump it. But why would you attack people on the campaign who are supporting him? And so basically anyone who supports Kennedy is now kicked out of a so-called anti-imperialist group on Twitter. And they'll block you. They'll block you.
That's why politics is such a difficult thing.
Well, I'll tell you, Kennedy's got his work cut out for him trying to heal the divide. Because some people, they don't want to heal the divide. They just want to fight. They just want to fight. They want to pick a fight with the police. They want to pick a fight with the government. They want to pick a fight with random people like me on Twitter. I mean, and they want to pick a fight with you here at Maverick News.
Yeah, that's right.
They just want to fight.
But the reason we have such a great family here is because we already made up.
Yeah,
we've
that's the beauty of it.
We've already kissed and made up. So everything's cool. And people are welcome to their points of view. I'm strongly opposed to violence. Simple as that.
And it's very Canadian. I wish Americans could do that. Canadians are so much better at letting bygones be bygones and being kind to each other. Americans have never really been very good at that. Americans like to get drunk and fight, boy.
So who's our special guest tonight whenever he shows up?
I hope he shows up. He's running a little bit late. Our guest tonight, at least our scheduled guest, is my friend Craig Jardula. We just call him Pasta. Yo Pasta.
Why do they call it? Why do you call him Pasta?
I don't know. We're gonna have to ask him why people call you Pasta.
Yeah, it's like Craig Pasta Jardula. I was like, is that really your middle name, dude? Like,
did your mama name you that?
Yeah, like she didn't like you or what?
Maybe she really loved pasta. But he's the host of a great show called the Convo Couch, and I really like him. You were asking earlier about his politics. And I guess, I don't know, I should let him define his politics, but he calls himself a libertarian, probably more of a progressive libertarian, kind of like myself. I guess we would agree on that. But Craig and I agree on a lot, and he's, big supporter of Kennedy. But,
Steve says, is he a commie too? Yeah, probably.
No, he's a libertarian. Not all of my friends are commies. I got a few commie friends, but that's another thing people don't understand. They're like, how could you be friends with a communist? How could you be friends with somebody on the left? How could you be friends with a Democrat? How could you even talk to them? Well, that's how you heal the divide. Let me tell you a little story about Kennedy. Back in the early 70s, he was a college kid down in Alabama, and he made friends with former Governor George Wallace, who was his father's nemesis, by the way, when they were trying to integrate the University of Alabama. President Kennedy's nemesis. You remember George Wallace, segregation now, segregation forever.
Yep.
Bobby Kennedy became friends with him. Quite good friends. And remember, Wallace was shot. There was an assassination attempt when he was running for president in 1972. The Kennedys reached out to George Wallace, invited him up to Hickory Hill, their home in Virginia, to recuperate after his shooting. He declined politely, but it opened the door to a friendship. And so Bobby Kennedy Jr. lived in Alabama for a few years while he was attending school, met his first wife down there, and he ended up becoming quite friendly with George Wallace. And, we were talking about John F. Kennedy Jr. on the show last week. John F. Kennedy Jr. also forged a kind of friendship with George Wallace later in his life. They said that the old segregationist had mellowed in his years, that he had realized the error of his ways, and he was truly sorry for what he did back in the early 60s and the views that he held, and that he actually turned out to be not so bad of a guy. And George Wallace was featured in a big interview in George magazine. John F. Kennedy Jr. interviewed George Wallace. So it just goes to show you, if Bobby could heal a divide with George Wallace, I think he can heal this country.
Yeah, you know what? If you knew some of the people that I've been speaking with in the last few days behind the scenes, you would not, like, politically not aligned at all, and it's like we're being friendly, and it would blow your mind.
You know what? I think our guest is in the wrong studio. Pasta just texted me and said, "Hey, I'm in the backstage," and I think he's in the other studio. Rick, you want me to go fetch it? Do you want to go?
Yeah, you use your dude, so you go get your dude.
I'll go get my dude.
I'll be over here. I'll run a couple of promos and keep people entertained. I'll do little tricks like that. How did I do that? Magic tricks until you get back. Okay. Hang on, I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Yeah, and again, if you haven't liked, shared, subscribed, please consider doing that. We really do need the support, and that's the easiest way to do it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Get your friends to subscribe. Share. Put it out all over the darn place. Share it out. Just share the links on Facebook. That would help us too. Not going to get you banned that way, but sure helps the channel just by posting the links. And it's time to bring in Lori and our guest. Let's see if this works. There he is, and there she is. Well, hello,
right.
Pasta.
How we doing? Let me make sure I got the right audio on. Cool, I do, and I can hear and see you guys clearly. How's everything? I was in the wrong spot.
Yo, Pasta. Sorry about that. I think I sent you the wrong link.
Was
It's
that
okay.
my
It
fault?
happens.
Was that my fault? Maybe it was me.
I wasn't
don't
late,
know.
though. I just want to let the audience know that I was on time here for Maverick News. I would never do that to them. And
That's right.
yeah, I'm
You
here
poor
with
thing.
you.
You were sitting backstage for 20 minutes just listening to us stall and ramble. And
I'm not listening to you guys, listening to Gonzalo Lira for a little while. I was like, oh, my Lord, would he just, pipe down for just a couple minutes over here too as well.
Is
Kind of
that, I
sharing the
was
same
curious to get
feelings
your
that you guys
take.
had.
Yeah, is he kind of thinking he's talking a little too much there?
Well, isn't it odd that he's saying he's trying to get over to Hungary and escape, and then telling people about it? I would kind of be quiet about it until I got to safety, and then, maybe then talk about it after. I don't know what the whole point of him telling people that is, but yeah, I mean, Gonzalo likes to talk a lot. Thank God, a lot of the stuff that he does say, though, is merited. He's got a lot of great information to put out there sometime. And it was weird, the whole Scott Ritter, Gonzalo thing too as well. That's what happens, and I guess when egos clash. But oh well.
Indeed. Well, I wish Gonzalo safe passage. I haven't heard an update from him today. I don't know if he's made it safely across the border. You would think now he might update us just to let us know he's okay. Or are we going to find out in 24 hours that he's back in prison in Ukraine, that they nabbed him? Yeah, I don't know. I hope he's all right.
Escaped safely. So
I truly wish him the best, and I don't mean to be rude when I'm telling him to just shut the hell up. It's for your own good, Gonzalo. I say this with love.
I don't get it. Whatever.
Well, hopefully he knows what he's doing. But speaking of love, I just love your show, and I'm so glad that you joined us, Pasta. And we were curious, why do they call you Pasta?
Funny story. Like my Italian grandma came to South Florida when I moved here at a young age to come visit us. And she was packing my lunch one day, and she made me take a bunch of pasta to school, like a big Tupperware with 20 forks to share with the kids. So the kids just started calling me Pasta. Started to complain. They called me Meatball. I shut up. It went back to Pasta. So I just owned it for quite some time. But I've been called Pasta since I was a little kid. It wasn't a name I gave myself. It was a name that was given to me. So I just owned it, and I've been Pasta ever since. And it's not my middle name for real, Rick. My middle name is Richard, and my mom doesn't call me Pasta, and she can't stand that people do call me Pasta. She's always like, your name is Craig. Tell people your name is Craig. But what am I going to do?
Well,
you're
you
looking good.
throw enough pasta at a name, and eventually it sticks.
Yeah.
Like
to the
pasta
wall.
to the wall.
Rick's got
Meet
jokes
the
today.
odd couple, ladies and gentlemen. Meet the odd couple. See, I knew you two guys would get along because you both wear fancy shirts and you're both, sane, reasonable, logical people. And, Rick thinks you're a communist, Pasta. You want to set him straight?
I have no idea. I said probably.
I am not now, nor have I ever been a communist.
Well, I'm not anti-communist, that's for sure. And I think the anti-communist movement is definitely about pitting the people against each other, pitting communists against capitalists. I purely believe that. I believe the biggest issue we have, the biggest ism that is an issue, is elitism, because they'll stand over any system, whether it be capitalism, communism, socialism, and they'll try to rule as much as they can. And, my business partner, Fiorella Isabel from the Convo Couch, she considers herself an anarcho-communist of sorts. So she is more of the communist. I consider myself a leftist libertarian. I've never been part of the Libertarian Party. I was a progressive, a Bernie Sanders guy, then a Tulsi person. And now, I just consider myself a leftist libertarian because the values of the Libertarian Party are so important to me. Freedom of speech with censorship is a big issue. Freedom of the press, civil liberties, those things, mean a lot to me. And I was able to meet a lot of libertarians on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign. So I kind of, called myself a leftist libertarian, but I don't even know if there's any such thing as left or right anymore nowadays. Everything seems to be so conflated, but I do that. So when I do meet people within the freedom movement, because I met a lot of Trumpers over the last several years being an election integrity activist, I want them to know that it's possible to talk and speak with people who think differently than them, to not pay attention to what's on the TV where you see the Democratic Party, which they call themselves leftist, and I don't think they're left at all. They just seem to be crazy. So the only reason I identify at times is to open up the discourse, to show that it's possible to have, talks and opinions with people who think differently than you, because I think that's the most important thing, is pushing back against this divide and conquer. So That's where I'm at nowadays.
Absolutely. And I've been a libertarian for 27 years. I left the Democratic Party back in 1995, and I'm no longer a member of the Libertarian Party. I guess you'd call me a small L libertarian. I tend to lean to the left. Nowadays, I just call myself a Kennedy libertarian. There's a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you? Are you a Kennedy libertarian or?
Well, no, I mean, well, for the record, Lori, and I got to explain this to a lot of people. I'm not necessarily supporting RFK. I'm supporting his candidacy, his campaign, because I believe there's a political discourse that's being brought to the table that wouldn't be brought if he wasn't there. Issues that are important to me, COVID issues that, are never talked about. They're swept behind the rugs, and no, it's not over. There's still a lot of things going on. There's still 70,000 workers in New York who haven't gotten their jobs back because they refused to take the shot. The WHO is trying to have their power grab. People are dying of myocarditis. All these things that are out there that are really important to me. Food sovereignty, which I think it really ties into the whole Medicare for all argument. As a Bernie Sanders progressive, our number one issue was Medicare for all. We were sick and tired of seeing people getting shut out, not having health care. We thought it was a human right, and I still think it's a human right. However, our Medicare system, our healthcare system, is not a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. It only deals with the symptoms. And, RFK, his life work has been fighting against the polluters of this world, fighting against the big farms, fighting against Monsanto and these other companies. So I believe that food sovereignty goes hand in hand with Medicare for all. I made a tweet not too long ago. I took a poll. I said, what's more important nowadays? Medicare for all or getting rid of Monsanto? Now, I think they're equally as important. But we have to start looking at the front end and not just the back end. I don't want to put into a system for Medicare for all that's going to dictate what I have to put in my body. And that's what we have right now. So these conversations that are coming forth with RFK are so important. And of course, the Ukraine-Russia situation is so important. I think he can be better on the whole situation. When he calls Putin a thug and a gangster, I don't like that at all. I think that Putin had no choice but to do what he had to do. However, the way he kind of talks back about his history, about putting ourselves in Russian shoes, about how Russia won World War II, really humanizing the situation. I think that's important. And also censorship, which is the biggest issue on the table. Take away our voice, and what do we have? So these issues that Kennedy is bringing to the table, maybe I've been a little bit advantageous with my post and my fundraisers, and people immediately think that, oh, Pasta's an RFK Kennedy guy. No, I appreciate his campaign just as much as I appreciate Cornel West's campaign. I think Cornel West is best on Israel, Palestine. Like you, Lori, I feel the same way. I think that RFK has this totally wrong. But I don't look at candidacies nowadays at what they don't offer. We know we're not going to get any love for Israel, Palestine with RFK. You know what I'm saying? It's obvious. I'm the one who went up there and asked him that. Everybody's chastising me.
That's right. Yes, you
I'm
were.
the one who went and asked him that.
You challenged him on it in New Hampshire.
Open up this can of what worms. So for me, I always look at what are we going to get from the candidacy, from the campaign. And there's a lot of things we're going to get. The political discourse right now I think is what's needed mostly, because we have a comatose nation who's so politically ignorant and they're just sleeping. And you know what? It's unfortunate that the playing field is that they only come around once every 4 years when there's a campaign. But these are the cards we're dealt. And I'm going to deal with them, and I'm going to handle them as best I can. I'm going to play with what's dealt with me. So I'm just doing my best to use him to further my movements, the things that I think are important. I'm going to use RFK to push those incidents. And where I think he's wrong, I'm going to push back against him as well. And I've already proved to do so. So that's where I'm at.
Right on. And, one of the things I get attacked for all the time on the left is, and just yesterday I was asked by the mob, hey, is Kennedy paying you to say the things that you say? And I'm like, no, I'm a volunteer. And they attack me for that. They're like, what are you, dumb? He's rich. Get you some money, girl. Make him pay you. And I'm like, but, if he paid me, if I worked as an employee of the campaign, that would take away my freedom to disagree with him from time to time on the issues where I do disagree. And Palestine is one of a few. We don't disagree much. But when we do, I like to have the freedom as a journalist to be able to critique that. As a commentator, I wouldn't be able to do that if I was employed by the campaign. I would be just another, paid flack for the campaign.
listen, if you got beef with somebody who's running, a politician, someone with power, go at it. I have no problem whatsoever. But when you start attacking me personally or the followers, I think that's wrong. If you're gonna support, Cornel West, I'm surely not going to call you a cultist or a fanboy or girl or say you're a sycophant. You know what I'm saying? I certainly had an interview with Cornel West, and if you haven't seen it, I encourage people to go look at it. He's not sharing it. Cornel West is not. He shares all his other interviews, but he didn't share mine on his Twitter. But at the end of the day, if that's the way you stand, that's how you feel. That's the way you feel. A lot of this treatment right now, Lori, kind of reminds me of the treatment we got as Tulsi supporters when I was totally supporting Tulsi, going to vote for her. I don't even know if I'm going to vote for RFK right now. I haven't decided that. If the Libertarian candidate comes along and he's great on he or she is great on Palestine and he or she is great on COVID, the two areas where I think RFK is great on COVID, which is so important to me, it's equally as important as what's going on in, Israel, Palestine, and Cornel West is there. But flip-flop, they're off on each other's, the opposite issues they're the best on, and that one Libertarian candidate is great on both of those issues. I'm going to vote for that Libertarian. Right now, people like David Smith and, Scott Horton and some of these Libertarians, Judge Napolitano, all these guys that are coming out. My friend Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown, they're good on those two issues, and those two issues are very important to me. I might vote for that Libertarian. My vote isn't, it hasn't been cast yet. So when people just say, oh, you're supporting RFK, they're wrong on that. Maybe I haven't made myself clear. Maybe, like I said, I've been a little advantageous with my fundraising because I do believe it's important to go out there and cover these issues. But, if you do like RFK, you don't like RFK, it pays to get guys like me and people like you in the room because we'll push back when we think he's wrong. And, we'll lift him up when he's right and we'll push him back when he's wrong. But we certainly shouldn't be attacking each other right now. That's the shame about everything that's going on.
So how's he going to win? Because the DNC doesn't believe in anything democratic within the party. It's just a machine. And it looks to me like they just generally select a candidate and go with that. And all of the rest is window dressing. So what's his path forward to victory? Short of Biden, of course, just keeling over and falling down again and not getting back up.
Well, Biden might slip in the shower again. My old business partner, Steve Poikin, used to say he's going to step on a rainbow. Something's going to happen. I still believe that's going to happen. I believe they're going to push Gavin Newsom. I really do. And here's the thing. I don't believe that Kennedy will win. I don't believe he can win because I believe it's a rigged system. However, the political discourse that's going to come about is more important to me than anything else. Having discussions about food sovereignty is important. Having discussions about what happened during COVID is important. Having discussions about what happens in Ukraine, Russia is important. And certainly speaking about censorship is real important. And I know there's a lot of people who say, well, man, RFK and the politicians, they don't know the issues. No, they don't. But RFK has 2.1 million supporters right now on his Twitter. It's growing. And if his megaphone is going to be much louder, I care about the issues. So I care about it reaching to as many people as possible. So I am all for that. So that's what I define winning. For me, winning is if we have a comatose nation that is going to wake up and listen. So be it. I'm going to take those victories.
Rick, I'll try to answer that question. How's he going to win? That is the most frequently asked question that I get, and probably you get, Craig. Anybody who's shown some support for Kennedy, we always get asked, but the Democratic Party hates him. That's readily apparent. So how's he going to win in the Democratic Party? And here's the answer. When it gets right down to it, politics is math. It's a game of math. He can't win without the votes. And he's got to win these primaries by such huge margins, right? That they cannot deny him the nomination. If he comes to the convention next summer in Chicago with so many wins under his belt, with so many delegates in his pocket, if they try to yank the nomination away from him, there's going to be a riot on the convention floor. It's not going to be like it was with Bernie in 2016 when Bernie was, screwed and he told his supporters to sit down. I'm sure you remember that, Craig. Yep. Bernie was like, oh, no, don't challenge Hillary. Just go with the flow. Don't cause a ruckus. Don't make a scene. we've gone so far past that point. People are so angry at this point. They don't trust the DNC. They don't trust the electoral process. If it's clear that he's coming in there with a majority of votes and they try to take it from him, all hell's going to break loose. All hell's going to break loose.
I got to say, you're a lot more enthusiastic than me. Like I said, and I don't want to get any trouble over here on YouTube and stuff like that. I just don't have firm belief in the system. I'm an election integrity activist, and I've been to 7 countries and observed their elections in Latin America, and I can tell you our election system is one of the worst. Not one country in Latin America, those 7 countries I went to, had mail-in ballots and drop boxes out in the middle of nowhere, a month of voting, proprietary software counting their votes. I mean, I went to Honduras and Nicaragua. Was one of the best elections I've ever saw. And you have 1 day of voting. You have to show up at your designated precinct with ID. It takes about 10 minutes to vote. The chain of custody starts at the door, public counting, so everybody knows what's going on, and you get results that night. We don't have that system. But, what I do think is possible, there could be some challenging through the courts. Number one, if he does get cheated, and I think he will he take on some of these sore loser laws and say, I'm going to run as an independent candidate? I believe the best way forward too, as well, is if there is unity between the Cornel West group and the RFK group after he gets cheated in the DNC, if that does happen. And that's why I'm so critical when people go attack each other, because I believe that, that unity is needed as a society. But there's 2 things to remember when people talk about the DNC lawsuit. Number one, Bernie Sanders was not part of that lawsuit. That was a lawsuit on the behalf of his followers who filed that lawsuit. Number 2, Bernie also made that lawsuit moot because he acquiesced. He gave Hillary Clinton the nomination by acclamation. If you go back and watch the DNC convention, he says, I'm going to suspend the rules, and by acclamation, I give it to Hillary Clinton. People should have sued Bernie Sanders for doing that, not the DNC. And that's where people get lost. So if Kenny were to attach himself to a lawsuit, and fight, or if he tries to run as an independent, or the green ticket would say Dr. Cornel West, and he tries to take on these sore loser laws, which a lot of people consider them be unconstitutional, then we might have something there. There are avenues in which they haven't been tested. And here's the thing, Lori and Rick, if we don't try, we'll never know, right? So let's give it a shot.
You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see an RFK Cornel West ticket. I think they'd be a terrific duo. They'd be great together, no matter which party, whether it's independent, green, Democrat, whatever they see fit. But I think they'd be a great match. That's why, like you, I'm quite disturbed when I see their supporters attacking each other. And I've seen Cornel, the candidate, attacking Kennedy. But I've never seen Kennedy attack Cornel West, and Kennedy's never had a bad word to say about Donald Trump. He doesn't even have anything really bad to say about his primary opponent, Joe Biden. He's trying to run a very clean and healing campaign to bring people together. And I think that's what our country needs. I know a lot of people may disagree with me because they'd just rather fight. But speaking of a fight, let's talk about politics and winning these primaries that people say it can't be done. And they always ask, what's the strategy, right? What's the plan? Well, the first 2 primaries historically in the nation have always been Iowa and New Hampshire. But the DNC did a little switcheroo on the calendar this year, and they're already started to rig it. They rigged it to put South Carolina first because that's the state that was the big turnaround state for Biden back in 2016. He seemed to have that one all sewn up. So they're saying, the New Hampshire and Iowa have state laws that say they have to go forward with their primaries regardless of the DNC calendar. So it looks like they just might go first. Bobby's been campaigning very heavily, especially in New Hampshire, but also in Iowa. And, the DNC fired back and said, if you go forward with those primaries and you don't abide by our calendar, your delegates won't count at the convention. So in other words, all that effort, all that time and money spent winning in New Hampshire and Iowa won't matter when he gets to the convention because they'll throw out his delegates, you see. So what he's trying to do now is he needs to pivot, and he's doing that to focus on winning South Carolina, because that is probably going to be the big primary that he has to win. I think it's important that he beats Joe Biden in South Carolina, and he really needs to go out and win the black vote. Biden couldn't have won without the black vote. Really, no Democratic candidate can. Now, if a guy named Robert F. Kennedy can't win the black vote in America, then there's something wrong, you know? He is greatly beloved by the black community. So he went to South Carolina this week, and I wanted to show you an interview that he did, a little clip from a local TV station here, because it's all about how is he going to win in South Carolina? What's the plan, Stan? And he'll tell you right here.
Robert Kennedy Jr. has faced a number of labels: anti-vaxxer, anti-Semite, and conspiracy theorist. But now he is a Democratic presidential candidate. And we sat down with him exclusively here in Charleston at the memorial for the naval for his once served. The Kennedy name with you everywhere you go. You are now running for president. I think my biggest question would be why and why now? And especially in the face of all the criticism that you faced. So often you look up your name and it says conspiracy theorist right before your name. Your own family has criticized you. A family member recently said your presidential run is a vanity project. So why run, and why run now?
Yeah, and by the way, my uncle served here briefly in 1942, and he was in this is John F. Kennedy. He was in the Office of Naval Intelligence, which was the predecessor to the OSS. I'm running for president because I want my children to grow up with the same pride in our country that I did. I grew up thinking with a very, very good reason that this country was the greatest country in history, that we were an exemplary nation, that we were the template, the model for democracy around the globe.
In regards to the files in your uncle's assassination, President John F. Kennedy, we know that not all the files have been released. If you become president, will you release all the files?
We have a law in this country, the JFK assassination documents law, that says that all those documents legally have to be released to the public. Why are they withholding 5,000 documents illegally 60 years after my uncle's death? You know, all the people who were involved in that murder are now dead. So who are they protecting? And clearly, you know, there's institutional anxieties about releasing that law, but the American people are entitled to them. It's an important thing for us to understand what happened. It was a coup d'etat against American democracy. President Trump promised that when he became president, he was going to release them because it's his legal obligation to do so. President Biden promised that he would. Both of those presidents broke their word to the American people.
How do you think you'd be able to release them when we have a Republican president able to release them and a Democratic president?
The president can release them. Both of those men decided not to. But that is not going to happen with me.
Something else I wanted to ask real briefly, the accusations of your anti-Semitic comments. After you were heard saying those, you went on Capitol Hill under oath. You said you'd never said anything anti-Semitic in your life. You then said you were a dedicated defender of Israel, even more so than President Biden. Then you went to New York. You sat down with some Jewish leaders in New York. Then you visited the grave of a prominent rabbi. So you've done a lot to say that those.
And by the way, the meetings that I had with Rabbi Shmuley in New York, and the meeting, my visit with Dov Hivkin, who was, you know, when the visit to Rabbi Shearson's grave, my father all visited him when he was alive. Those were arranged prior to, you know, these allegations. People knew that I was going to do those visits prior to making these false accusations that I had made anti-Semitic statements. I've never made an anti-Semitic statement in my life, and my program on Israel is much better than any of the Democrats. I'm the only Democrat who has condemned the transfer of $2.5 billion to Iran when Iran is building nuclear weapons.
And I know,
But listen, I am right now a threat to the DNC and to President Biden. And for a long time, the policy of the White House was to ignore me, hoping that I would go away.
On your website,
So I'm going to stop that there. He says that the DNC just wants him to go away, which we all know is absolutely true. Pasta, I was going to ask your thoughts on that because I haven't really heard you weigh in on and maybe you did, I might have missed the show, but have you weighed in on how the Biden administration is now pivoting and saying that they want to end our special relationship with Israel? That came as a shock. I thought the timing of that was interesting because it was the same day that Kennedy was in New York having that meeting with Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Any thoughts on that?
Well, if Biden says anything, it's just for, standing for votes. I think at the end of the day, we understand where Joe Biden will stand with Israel. He's called himself in the past, I am a Zionist, if you don't remember the famous quote. And nothing I see from anybody in Congress is going to pivot away from making sure that they're, in the pockets, the Israeli lobbyists in their pockets, and they'll be loyal to Israel. I hate this argument right here, too, as well, because as he's trying to prove that he is not anti-Semitic, what's really getting conflated is the difference between being anti-Semitic and being anti-Zionist, right? I mean, that is the big problem and the issue over here. And now he's put himself in a position where he has to show that he's not anti-Semitic by being so pro-Israel that it's a turnoff to a lot of people in the anti-establishment movement. So, also then he doubles down talking about Iran and not having them have nuclear weapons. Well, that has nothing to do with being anti-Semitic or, anti-Zionist. That has everything to do with just making a geopolitical move. Iran, the CIA's first regime change took place in Iran. And when he said stuff like, Israel is a beacon of democracy in a field of a sea of totalitarianism. Well, whose fault is that, right? How many radical groups from the Mujahideen to Al-Qaeda has U.S. foreign policy supported? We're the reason why a lot of these dictatorships or theocrats or whatever they want to say are in there. We supported the kingdom for quite some time. This is all by our own doing, U.S. foreign policy. So for him to make these statements, I certainly disagree with him, and I hope he doesn't continue on with them because, we have to look and see, he's mentioned in Latin America, the way our foreign policy, he once mentioned on David Smith's show that the reason why so many people are coming from Guatemala is because we constantly mess with their government. We constantly overturn who's there, and we do this in a lot of Latin American countries. The Monroe Doctrine is alive and well, and there's still an occupation of the United States taking place with all our military bases in Latin America. But then he also pointed out the reason why there's nobody from Costa Rica coming here and so many people are coming from Guatemala. Well, in Costa Rica, we don't mess with that government. We haven't overturned their presidencies. The same thing's taking place in the Middle East, and he has to acknowledge that. So unfortunately, with this whole push to not be anti-Semitic, he's, I think, going overboard. And his position is quite alarming. I don't like this position at all. However, you had pointed out too as well, Lori, and this is the harsh reality. Unfortunately, people don't look at Israel, Palestine, and the voters in America or the people in America as a top priority. They don't even look at foreign policy as a top priority. They hide the COVID protocols and regard foreign policy. So it's not going to hurt him that much politically. However, there has been a wedge between the anti-establishment movement, and I just don't agree with him on this position here.
Right. And it's interesting, this pivot that Biden has suddenly made because he was so Zionist his entire career, so pro-Israel. Now, all of a sudden, he's shaking the finger at Israel and saying, if you don't clean up your act, I'm going to end our special relationship. Do you think that's just a pander to the left to try and get their votes to say, hey, I might actually support Palestine? And do you think that the leftists who are now attacking people like me, who agree with them on the issue, are going to go vote for Biden?
No, I don't think they're going to vote for Biden. I don't think he's going to turn any heads. I don't believe anybody believe him. anyways. I don't think that this move to call him and try to frame him as an anti-Semite was going to work anyways. They're still sticking with the anti-vaxxer, kind of label. We see this as that they're sending out notices in New York to try to get him removed off the ballot. So I don't think it's going to work anyways. But there are people who are going to vote for Biden no matter what in the Democratic Party because of the but Trump mentality. So, listen, RFK, he's pivoted to South Carolina. He's going to try to win some votes over there. But unfortunately for him, the Republicans are going to have a primary. And there's a lot of conservative voters who, because of this one issue that the COVID protocols, would have voted for him if there was no primary on the Republican side. But there's going to be a Republican primary. So he's going to lose a chance at some voters. It's an open primary there, which is a good thing. But also, too, the way the rules are set up in South Carolina, the voting system, there's DRE machines. Let's not forget that Joe Biden was in 7th place, and then he came out of South Carolina number 1. Right. The person who was in 2nd place and the person who was in 4th place dropped out to endorse him. And there is a machine there, the Clyburn machine, the Clinton machine. I used to shake my head, and it was really confusing to me why black people in South Carolina voted supposedly for the Clintons, Hillary Clinton, over Bernie Sanders. So, people can shake their head and scratch their head with the Kennedy thing, but, it just seems like, people will vote because they're scared, of the but Trump situation. So you're going to see them back Biden in South Carolina. Not to mention, like I said, these DRE machines, these direct response recorded devices where you can go up and push things and buttons, and then they take the chip and go count it somewhere else. There's not a lot of transparency in that voting system in South Carolina, and that's another thing the Kennedy campaign is concerned about when it comes to South Carolina. So I don't see a pivot to Biden just because he's saying some guff right now. When we're looking at the situation, like I said earlier, we have to, deal with the cards we were dealt. We have to play in the field we're in. And with these Democrats right now that are running things, for them to go unchecked, whatnot, that's why at one point I was very upset with RFK running as a Democrat. Like, why would you do that? Run as an independent. But now he has the Democratic Party. They have to pay attention to them. They have to answer to what he's doing. He is challenging them every single step of the way. And I'm thankful for that. I can see the beauty in that when I was very upset with that. But this was not a surprise to me because he does things. And this is why he pushed for New Hampshire. I got in the room with Kennedy. There was no problem. He took questions. He was, he might not have liked the question, but he's going to answer it. And he'll always do that. And that's something that's good. I hope to God he does take the interview with Max Blumenthal. I think Max is great when it comes to Israel, and I'd love to see that. But this doesn't surprise me at all. It kind of reminds me of watching his father, an old school video of his father walking around in a poor neighborhood in Mississippi, a black neighborhood in Mississippi, and talking to the people there, talking to the voters. And some of the questions he was asking were so like, just you would learn. He was asking people, did you ever hear about this program? Do you know how to access it? So he wasn't just touting this one particular program that was going to help the working class. He was talking to people of, do you know how to get to it? Do you know how to access it? So, I see RFK cut from the same cloth of his father. And there was another good question too that he had answered to as well, is like, how can we be assured that you'll do what you say you're going to do? Well, he has a history. He has a history of fighting some of the biggest corporations in the poorest neighborhoods. He's done that for quite some time. And it's a shame that is being overshadowed by his awful stances on Israel. And they are awful in my mind. But he's done this work for so long, and he has fought for some of the most vulnerable against some of the most richest corporations for quite some time. So that's how we can be assured he'll be there. And also, the other side about this whole situation is what Gentleman was talking about. Joe Biden wrote the crime bill. When the crime bill was signed almost overnight, so many programs for people in jail were pulled, whether it be them trying to get a welding degree or an engineering degree or a Series 7 so they can, do real estate or work in the stock market when they get out. With the crime bill, it punished them. And overnight, all these grants were pulled right away from them. So I wish he would have said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to repeal that crime bill. I'm going to make sure that people inside prisons can get access to these grants so they can get these degrees so that when they do get out, they have a fighting chance, because that's another part of the equation. And this goes directly at the point is, why would anybody in their right mind vote for Joe Biden?
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.